this video, I'm going to show you how to take numerical data from two different variables without missing data. And I'm going to show you how to take that and calculate a regression equation between those variables in three different ways. The first way is going to be using the trendline function of the scatterplot. The second way, we're going to do it manually. And the third way, we're going to use some of the built-in functions of Excel. And then finally, we're going to interpret the coefficients of the regression equation that we generate. So we're in the workbook 1920 Regression, and we are in the worksheet Anger. So this question here, there's two questions here administered to 50 people. And the first one says, on a scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being never, and 100 being very often, about how often do you get angry? So this is a number. And the second question is, what do you think about human nature? On a scale from 0 to 10, are people generally good? 0. Or evil? 10. This is a scale, so this is also a number. So the data are down here, and in order to make a scatter plot, the first thing we want to do is find an area to put it. So this area right here looks pretty good, so I'll just click here. And I want to click on Insert, and then on Scatter. And I'm going to choose this one here, which is Scatter with only markers. And once the chart is here, I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to go down to Select Data. Now under Legend Entries, I'm going to click Add, and under Series Name, I'm going to add a title for the chart. So what I'm telling you in the box to the left is the title should be something like your dependent variable explained by the independent variable. And in this case, I'll just arbitrarily choose 1 as the dependent variable. I will choose anger. So our dependent variable by our independent variable. And our x values, I'm going to click here on our x column on the first data point here and do Control-Shift down. I've got all of those data points. Now in the y values, sometimes it puts this little thing here. I just delete that first because things get a little tricky if you don't. And then I'll select my y values. So I'm down here at the bottom, right? And I'm doing Control-Shift up. And make sure you're not including the label, so make sure you're holding in Shift still, and go down just the data points, so B26 to B75. Hit Enter. And click OK. And I'll click OK again. Now if I scroll up, I will see that all of my data points have now been plotted. The next thing we want to do to make this a little bit more presentable is to make sure you indicate which axis is which. So adding axis titles is what we want to do. So if you're clicking on the chart tools will appear up at the top. If you click away, they're gone. So let's click on the chart, and we want to go up to the chart tools and click on Layout. And from there we can go over to axis titles, as you might guess, to add an axis title. We can do the horizontal one first, so title below the axis. And what was our horizontal axis? Well, this is the one that's going from 0 to 10. This was the view on human nature. And that's coming up here right in this box up here. It's appearing. I want to hit Enter. It's going to be generated down here. Or I could have typed it down here as well. So I'm going to hit Enter, and there it is. Next, I'm going to add the vertical axis, so axis titles, vertical axis. You can choose any one of these, whichever one looks nice. I'm just going to choose rotated title, and I'm going to type in anger. Enter. The next step is the really great part. We can add a trend line to our chart by right-clicking on a data point and selecting Add Trend Line. So make sure that linear is selected, and we want to display the equation of that trend line, which is going to be our regression equation, right on the chart. And I'm going to go ahead and display the r squared value as well. And let's clean up this chart a little bit. I'll get rid of this. This is unnecessary, so I just clicked on it, hit delete. And let's move our little box here somewhere where it's more visible. There we go. So we have our regression equation right there. And I'm just going to drag this out of the way. So that's one of the easiest ways to generate your regression equation. But just for review, let's be a little bit clear on what exactly this is doing here. So I'm just going to move this chart out of the way. So each of these coefficients, our slope b, which is with 6.7, and our a, the 21.1, are coming from these formulas, essentially. Excel is doing this behind the scenes for us. But just to demonstrate where exactly these are coming from, let's go ahead and calculate them. So in order to do this, the first thing we want to do is to calculate each of our averages, because they're going to be used in each of these equations. So what's the average of x? Well, equals average. And what are our x values? From B26, Control Shift down, to A75, close parentheses, and enter. Now our y equals average, and we'll go up to B26, Control Shift down, enter. And there we have our two averages. Now the sum of the x minus x bar times y minus y bar, what we're going to do there is to calculate each of these ones here, because we're going to need all of them for these formulas. So what does this mean? Well, it's equals the x data point minus the mean. And we're going to drag this down, so we want to lock in the average, because we don't want this to go down, because that would create a mess, right? We want to keep each data point minus the average. So I'm going to hit F4 to lock that one. Close parentheses, times, open parentheses, y minus y bar, F4 to lock it, close parentheses, enter. Our x minus x bar squared equals x minus x bar, lock, close parentheses, squared, enter. And our y minus y bar, similarly, parentheses, y minus y bar, squared, and make sure that we lock that. Let's click in there and hit F4 to lock it. So make sure this one is locked and this one is not. Once we have these, we can just highlight these three items and double click on the little black box. Double click. And all of the other calculations have been done for us. So now we're ready to get our sum of x minus x bar, y minus y bar. And that's just equals the sum of, well, this column, C26, Control Shift down, enter. The sum of our x minus x bar equals sum, each of the x minus x bar squareds, so D26, Control Shift down, enter. And the sum of our y minus y bars equals sum, add up all of the y minus y bars, so E26, Control Shift down, enter. So now we can just plop each of these things right into our formula here. So B equals our sum right here, the x minus x bar, y minus y bar, divided by the squared deviations in x. Enter. And our A equals, well, what's our y bar? That was right here. Minus B, which we just calculated, times our x bar, which we already calculated. Enter. And we'll also go ahead and calculate our r and our r squared. And the formula for r is right here. So equals b times square root the deviations of x squared divided by the deviations in y squared. So all of that's under the square root. Close our parentheses and hit enter. And our r squared is just going to be r squared. So you can see that this is matching up exactly with what we had in our chart up here, the 6.76. That's right there. And our A is the 21.111, and that's right there. So when you have no missing data, this is a decent strategy to use. And we can also use this strategy here. There are built-in functions with Excel. So we don't even need to calculate any of these ones here. We can just go in, and what is our slope? Well, the formula is just slope. Open parentheses. What are our y's? I'll select the y's, Control-Shift down, comma, and what are our x's? So I'll click on the bottom cell here, and Control-Shift up. And make sure we're not selecting our label by tapping down. I'm holding in Shift and I'm tapping down to get out of the label. So now I'm only selecting those 50 rows of data, one column, and I'm going to hit enter. There we go. One simple formula got all of that tedium out of the way. Now our intercept, well, the formula for that is intercept. And again, select the y's, click here, Shift Control down, comma, click on the x's, Shift Control up. Don't select the header. Enter. See our numbers matching up again, and our r value is actually called the Pearson r. So we can just type in Pearson, and actually the order doesn't matter here because the correlation is independent of which one is the dependent or the independent variable, whereas the regression equation is dependent upon which one is dependent and independent. So I can select x first, or I can select y first, it doesn't matter. So I'm arbitrarily going to choose x first here, so Shift Control down, and then we want to make sure we're typing in our comma, and then B75. Shift Control up, and don't select the header. Enter. That's matching up. And we could square that, or there's also an r squared formula, or we could just type in RSQ, and we do the y's and the x's. Again, it doesn't matter which one we're doing, so it says y and x, I could do x and y. It doesn't really make a difference. So I'll do the y's. So just make sure you do each one. If you choose the same data set twice, you're going to get a correlation of 1, because the same data points are going to be exactly the same compared to the same data points. So B26 to B75, A26, A75, so we have both of our columns, and I'll hit enter. And you can see that these numbers are identical. So our regression equation, based on all of this rigmarole, we could have used either of these three ways. We could have made the scatter plot, we could have done it manually, or we could have used these functions. All of us are giving the same exact regression equation. So our equation was y hat equals 21.11 plus 6.76 x. Now what does this regression equation mean? What is it telling us? Well, the y-intercept, the A, is telling us that people who view human nature as generally good, our 0 category, have a score of 21.11 on the anger scale. And the slope is telling us that each 1 unit increase in how evil someone thinks people generally are is associated with a 6.76 unit increase on the anger scale. And that's it. Note that I have not said anything about causality here, because I don't know whether or not somebody's view on human nature is causing them to be more aggressive, or whether maybe their aggression is causing them to be have a more negative view on human nature. Or maybe there's some third variable that's explaining both of these together, that these are covariant according to some third variable.